Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fly Tying Thursday for Project Healing Waters Omaha. And tonight we have a special guest, Gary Begley from United Fly Fishers in Lebanon, Ohio. He's a FFI certified casting instructor and a member of the FFI fly tying group. That's Fly Fishers International. Tonight he'll be tying a couple of great flies for warm water species, but they can also be used for trout. So, Gary, I'll hand it over to you and you can take it from here.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. And thanks for the opportunity to demonstrate tying tonight. Like Mike said, I've got two patterns at least. Depending on how time goes, I might have a third. And they're all warm water species. That's actually Mike answered back when I asked what kind of water they had that you guys have there. And it's pretty much identical to what I have. So that made it easy for me. I'm going to share 2 or 3 patterns that are favorites of mine. And if at any time while I'm tying along, if anybody has a question, please feel free to ask. And if no one has any questions at this point, I'll just go ahead and get started with the first fly. All right. The first fly is a John Barr fly. It's a meat whistle. John Barr, if you're not familiar with him, he's a guy who came up with a copper John, which is extremely popular nymph. And this fly is, well, I'll just say there's a lot of guys in my club that say that this is the only fly you need for smallmouth bass. I can't agree with that 100% because I like to catch them on top water as well, which is why I planned a hopper pattern for the second one. So I'll show you what the fly looks like. Right on a jig hook, it won't necessarily land hook point up, but whenever you start stripping it in or working the fly, because of the fact that it's on a jig hook with this 90-degree bend up to where the tippet's going to go, it will ride. It'll strip hook point up, which is handy because this is the color combination I'm going to tie tonight, and it somewhat mimics the crayfish that are in some of my local streams. So I can just crawl it along the bottom or strip it. A lot of different ways you can fish it across and down on the swing. A lot of different ways you can fish it. Always let the fish tell me what they want. So I'll take a look. Let's take a look at the materials. There's a lot of them. I'll go through them real quick. Gamakatsu hook, serious hook, very large hook gate. I'm using a 2/0 tonight. That I usually use that size or larger for smallmouth. Got brass cone heads. We've got some flat diamond braid for underbody. And we've got some wire. It's going to serve 2 purposes, copper brown wire. It's going to rib this diamond braid material, and it's also going to bind down the rabbit strip, the zonker strip. And that's a strange technique, not one that I've only seen John Barr use, but it works really well because it's going to be more durable than binding it down with thread. We've got some flashaboo for flash, some rubber legs, which I love, and I think adds a lot of action. And speaking of action, we've got some marabou. And I'll get back over to the vise. There we go. Now, I've got it up this way. This is the way I normally tie. Of course, I had it inverted to show you how it's going to lay in the water. And the way this fly starts off is with the beak cone already on the hook. And you start the thread and run about a 1/4 inch length. And I'm not going to do the whole thing because this gets really boring. I've got one that's already prepared. Come back not quite all the way, run the thread back and not stop just shy of that point. And eventually, we're going to stop just shy every time of where we stopped prior. Eventually, we'll end up with somewhat of a football shape that this cone can go up on and fit on tight. And we do use a little bit of super glue as well. But instead of me making you guys watch me wrap that and wrap it and wrap and wrap it, I've got one that I've already completed up to that point. There we go. So under there is just a football shape of thread, dab of super glue, and then I push the cone up, and that's where it stays. Now you want to make sure, one point that I want to bring out, you want to make sure you get this on straight so it'll track properly if you're stripping it in the water. And I thought to myself, I need to say that, but I wouldn't be objective to putting it on. And actually, I'm going to try that this spring. Put it on a little bit of an angle, so maybe it would be kind of like a wounded crayfish, perhaps in the water. But then we start the thread. Now, if you guys are beginning level, I would say let's run a thread base all the way back to the hook barb, and then we'll tie in a wire, and then we'll tie in a braid. But I'm not going to do that. I'll show you the way I tie this. All you need is just to get to the point where you have good thread control, where you've got good tension all the way around the hook. And frankly, guys, you don't even have to have a thread base. A little bit of bare space up front. A wire on the bottom. And notice I'm not making a tight touching turns. It's simply not necessary. I'll bring this back up. And wrap the diamond braid material. Now, what I like to do, instead of throwing the bobbin holder over, I like to take the last turn in front of the thread and then just take a normal turn, ties it off. Much smoother, much simpler, in my opinion. And get rid of the excess. I'll keep the wire back here out of the way for now. Next, we need to invert the hook. And I've got a piece of rabbit ready to go. I said this is the way it's going to ride in the water as you strip it, so I need this to go on this side of the hook. And I'm actually going to put a hole in the leather. It needs to go right there. I'm just going to take my bodkin and poke a hole in there in the center. And I'll do it off camera, so in case I need to get a band-aid, you guys won't have to see that. Just ran my bodkin through. It comes out. Thread that in through the hole that I just made. Again, I'm going to go off camera. Inverted. Bring this around. I'm just a little bit. There you go. Try where I want it to be. That's going to work just fine. I'm going to bind this down well. Go ahead and do a half hitch right there. And for those of you that haven't seen, I did my half hitch. I put my bodkin up next to my index finger. Grab two fingers like so. Come around and I can pull this down. So as far as I'm concerned, I got really good control as where that knot's going to go. Now, this is kind of unique to John Barr's patterns that I've seen. I've not seen anyone else do this. This is, I'm going to thread this through and bind down this anchor strip with the thread. Almost like I'm sewing it into that spot right there. Now I believe this is referred to as Matuka style, but it's normally done with a thread. Try to get where you guys can see what I'm doing. And I think it goes without saying that this is going to be more durable than the thread. Got some of the fibers there behind. See if I can get those plucked out. Can everybody hear me well when I'm over here at the vise?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay, good. And working with my microphone situation. Just want to make sure. Down. This size wire is a little tougher than I use. There we go. And like I started to say, I found some of these fibers down. See if I get those recouped to the proper side. That's what works.
What size wire is that?
It's brassy size.
Right. Okay.
You're not familiar with it. They make at the ultra wire. It's brassy. They make extra small, brassy, medium, and then large. I don't know this for sure, but I think brassy size comes in from the fly called the brassy. I'm not familiar with it. That's just my assumption at this point. Now, the next step, bring the hook back to the quote normal position, and then tie in a couple rubber legs. I'm going to have it set, so I'm going to find the approximate center, wrap this around a thread, and bring it up on top. I want 2 on one side and 2 on the other. I'm going to buy 1, 2, 3 wraps over here, pull these back on this side, and go back up those 1, 2, 3 wraps. Now I've got 2 over here, 2 over on the far side. And next we need some flash of blue. This is another kind of a strange procedure. Zoomed out it. Flash of blue. I like to cut crystal flash and flash of blue both when I get them. I cut a little corner out of the bag so I can reach in with my bodkin and pull out the amount that I want. And I have done so. I'm just going to cut off enough to reach back behind the hook bend, which is back here. And here, back behind the hook bend. I'm just going to cut that off. And I've got a little bit more than I want. And I'll tell you why, because I usually end up losing a few strands. The idea here is to wrap it on the hook in front of the bunny strip and kind of push it around so it's going around the top portion of the hook shank. And like I said, I usually lose some. We go to the bottom of hook shank, and I get just a few less. About the same length back behind the hook bend. And get these bound down. Let's try to keep track of my legs. Keep them on the proper side. Okay. Next will be some marabou. And it's basically the same operation. With the marabou, I'm going to take one piece back about to the hook bend. Line that down. Push it pushed down around. Try to get it to go around the top portion of the fly. And we got another one for the underside. There's that. I like tying these big streamer type patterns. You don't have to be so particular, like with a small dry fly or a teeny midge pattern. Yeah, I'll find this down well. Good tight turns. I'm going to do a whip finish right there. Now, in order to get rid of that band of thread that's back here, I'm going to use a scrap piece of the Zonker strip. I'm going to pull just some out. I'm going to use it as a dubbing. A little bit more. Half inch in there and just about a 3-turn wick finish. And there we have a meat whistle.
That looks tasty.
Yeah, smallmouth absolutely love it.
I'll bet largemouth would love that too.
Yeah, course, most of the small streams that I fish in, we have smallmouth, but not really any largemouth. That would be up in the lakes in this area. But yeah, no doubt, it's a good bass fly. It's
I think that'd be fun to fish from a boat with for largemouth or
no
smallmouth.
doubt. Yeah, no doubt it would be. Yeah.
As many
It's
materials as are in there, it really isn't that difficult to tie.
No, it's not. Actually, I'm glad you said that. I was going to mention that to begin with. I was going to say it looks complicated, but it's not. We're just tying some things on the hook. Not very difficult to tie whatsoever. Any other comments or questions? You say pretty straightforward.
Mick, you tie one along with us?
Yeah, I usually use it for white. But it's kind of funny why I use white. Basically, at Bennett, it's you clean your trout off at the stream, and there's a lot of offal, as they call it, the guts. And throwing this out there, man, if nothing else works, all white works really well. I just use some flash and the rubber legs as well, but purely all white.
Why not a meat version of the meat whistle?
Yes, the meat version of the meat whistle.
That would work. Yeah, actually, I've got the 3 color combinations that John recommends. There we go.
Olive, I was going to say.
Black
Olive is always great.
Yeah. That I like the black one for when it's what's real bad stained water, really muddy and such. I'll throw the black one.
Right.
Works well.
Very nice.
And of course, you just adjust the colors to match everything, different color marabou and flash and such. All right. That take about 20 minutes. So, guys, ready for the next pattern?
Yes, sir.
I'll put one in the vise. And some other sort of strange techniques on this one as well. This one is a Charlie Craven pattern. It's a Charlie Boy hopper, and it works really well on its own. When smallmouth are cooperating on topwater, I like to take these. And of course, you can use it with trout as well. You could use it as a dropper, drop a weighted nymph down off the back of it. And hoppers, a little bit of caution. Of course, like anything, you can tie for the fisherman, you can tie for the fish. I like to tie both ways. This one is a DC hopper or Craven, joint effort between the two of them. And if you notice, it's got an underwing. It's got some flash in there. It's got another underwing of hair. It's got a bullet head, kicker legs, they call them. But let's be realistic. I like to keep in mind what the fish see. And that's just about the same thing. Body segments, rubber legs, this is what the fish is going to end up seeing. Maybe from a profile standpoint, they might get a look at the wing, but as when I go fishing, I don't put all the extra flash and fluff on hopper patterns. I just tie a Charlie Boy hopper or something very similar, and that's it. So I'll get this out of the vise and show you materials for it. Much simpler as far as that is concerned. Like there's an example of different colors: yellow one, orange one, darker green, olive, lighter color green. All we've got is the hook. I'm using a TMC 2312, size 8 tonight. You can go bigger, you can go smaller. I got a piece of green foam. I got a piece of pink foam. I'll explain that. We got some deer hair, rubber leg material, and another piece of deer hair, fluorescent color that I use that to put on what I call a fly finder. So I'll explain that when we get there. And a hook and device. All right, I'm gonna do a crisscross thread base. This is foam body fly. Foam is notorious for sliding around on the hook shank. Of course, you can use super glue, and the way this fly is designed, I'm going to need to use a little bit of super glue for the rear portion. But normally, I try to refrain from using super glue or flex them in, or you fill in the blank. I'd much rather tie a fly than glue one together. But I always qualify that by saying there are times when you do need to use some glue. This is going to be one of them. The tie this in red thread so you guys can see. I'm going to start in red thread so you guys can see what I'm doing as far as a thread base. I'm going to spin my thread clockwise. Because I want it twisted. I want it corded up. Put some texture on the hook shank. I'm going to wrap, obviously, open turns all the way back. And I'm going to come back this way. Now, frankly, guys, I think this is possibly a better thread base than a smooth thread base because I got some texture here. I run my bodkin across here, I can feel it go bump, 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 bump. And the cross, on the way back to the hook bend, toward the hook bend, they're going at this angle. Coming back, the thread wraps are going at this angle. So essentially, I've got two layers of thread, and the top one's binding down the first one. Now, I think I need to get this off right now. Yes, I need to switch threads. I do like to tie this in a tan. I was practicing a couple of nights ago and was looking at the camera and tying it with tan thread, and you can't see the tan thread well enough to see the crisscross, what I wanted to show you. So I'll go back to, but I'm going to switch to the color that I like for this.
Just a quick
Okay.
note, other than the specific hook model that he cited, these are sold just about everywhere as a curved nymph hook, I think. Sometimes they'll also be marketed as a stimulator hook, just with that
Right.
slow curve on the shank like that.
Right. Yep. Yep. Good point. This
Any of those
does have
hooks
a
would work.
slight. I'm sorry.
I was just saying any of those hooks would work.
Of course, yeah. And actually, Charlie ties it on a TMC 100, which is just a straight shank dry hook.
Oh, wow.
That's what he's got. That's what he's got in his book. Anyway, I like the curve. I think the curve can make, if you get to the point where you need to strip something and cause some disturbance in the water, I think the curved hooks are much better for that. Okay, next. Here's my piece of foam. It's going to end up going on and getting folded over. And I'm going to make sure that I've got this at about the right point. We're going to pull in it again. Idea here is to stop shy of my finger. That's nowhere near as tough as the leather was on that rabbit strip. All right, you can either have the thread off to the rear or up on front. And I'm going to get a measurement here as to where it needs to go. My red thread's coming loose. That's not good. Okay, there's one little spot that I can go poke through the hook eye. All right, that's the basic foundation for the body. So I'll go across like that. Now this is where I need to get super glue out. And you really need to use super glue because this last portion out here does need to be glued. Now, since I've got it in my hand, I do go ahead and line it across right here. And just for the record, my personal experience, this particular brand has a much, well, I should say this brand, but this dispenser has a much longer shelf life than me. And actually the same brand, but this style. This it seems the tip seems to get clogged, dries up inside there. It's really, this really lasts up much longer. So I'm gonna, with this rear section up, I'm gonna fold this over. And really, I'm only worried about the rear section getting glued together because I'm gonna bind this down like this. Form the body segments. I'm gonna cross over up top.
I'm sorry if you said, but what are you using for thread?
I didn't say, and it's Ultra Thread 140 denier,
Okay, thanks.
and it's tan. Okay. Normally, I use 70 denier on these flies, and I can even flare the deer hair with the 70. But on camera, for some reason, I get a little heavy with the bobbin holder. So I know from experience, I need to jump it up to 140. So if you got a soft enough hand where you can flare the deer hair, you can slide down to 70 denier for that matter. Okay, we need to get this rear section off. It's too long. This style razor blade, this regular double-edged razor blade, and I broke it in half. I'm gonna run this straight across, like so. And I like to, this is not critical at all. Of course, you guys realize that. I do like to knock the corners off of this, just because. Not going to change the way it fishes or look, it's in the water. I don't believe it all. So the next thing is we need to add the rubber legs. Now, of course, I got a piece of rubber leg material. We all know I can cut that in half, tie half over here, tie half on the far side. I like to do it a little differently. I like to come in between the vise and the thread, actually pick the thread up and set this down over here. I'm going to take a turn so it doesn't go anywhere. Pull this back so I'm a little bit longer than the tail. And I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to take this and run it through in between the vise and the thread, pick the thread up, quickly get a wrap on that because there's nothing holding that over there. It was about even back there. And then all I have to do, take a cut with my scissors. There's my four legs. I like to think it's shorter. Anytime you want to get the same length with legs, you can just pull them straight up. Now they're the same length. All right. Time for some deer hair. Let's go ahead. I like to trap this. So legs in the second. Body section. All right, there. Now it's time for some deer hair. And if I get rid of this other stuff, we'll just have the deer hair. And I can switch over to the material camera. And actually, I probably need to get a little more light. That look better? I'm going to get not very much at all. Not quite a pencil's diameter worth. Cut that off. I need to get rid of all the under fur and the fuzzy stuff in the short ones. I like to use a comb. You can see all the stuff in there that keep it from flaring. And into hair stacker. And I just smack it against my hand. The palm of my hand is really plenty good enough. Pull it out in the direction that I need the tips of the hair to go. It's going to be to the rear of the fly, of course. I like to get this measurement and trim it before I bend it, before I bind it down. I want this to be a little longer than the butt end of the fly. Now, as far as trimming this off, I want it to be a little bit longer in front. As far if I just try to cut this straight, I'll cut way out here at first. It jumps out of the way. Didn't want, well, it's actually cutting pretty good. But generally, if you cut with a slight angle inward towards your fingers, you'll end up with a better cut. Now I'm going to spin my thread counterclockwise. That way it's going to shoot back toward my fingers. And if I just pull this down, it'll flare, it'll be on top, kind of. The thread torque is going to want to take it all the way around. So what I like to do is come up and go around just the hair. Now I can pull this down and wrap this, and I've got a loop around it. That's going to help hold it on top. And that flares out my hair. And I don't have any running down the other side. Now, let's think about this. I've only got thread around the outer perimeter of that bundle of hair. There's thread pressure on everything in the center, but there's no actual thread holding it down. Now picture a bundle of sticks. If you got a bundle of sticks held together with some twine, and you lose 2 or 3 out of the center, you're going to lose the whole bunch. So what I like to do with a corded thread is wrap through this. This is why I like tan thread, because it's virtually invisible down inside there, and bind that down more. And I like to do a half hitch right there. Okay. Now this other color hair over here is my fly finder. I refer to it as, a lot of guys would call it a strike indicator, but the flies as they're going, especially in stream, in and out of light conditions, in shade, into sunlight. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to see my fly or find my fly, for that matter. So I like to take this a little bit of some color, nice bright color of deer hair that you're able to see well across the stream. I'm going to get rid of these tips because I simply don't need them. No need to stack it. I'm just going to bind this down. Let it flare up.
Need
Gary,
to
can you
switch
switch your
cameras.
camera?
Sorry about that, guys. That would be a good idea. I just laid it on top and took a couple wraps around it, pulled it tight. Is all I did. Sorry about that.
I do that all the
And-
time.
Yeah.
Don't I, John?
It is easy to do.
Oh, yeah, we all do. I
I got
personally
3
think it's a
cameras.
ploy to see who's watching.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So there's my fly finder, I refer to it as. And I like to do a quick finish right through the middle of this. And there's my version of a Charlie Boy Hopper. Now, the reason I go down to 70 denier thread as opposed to this 140 that I used tonight, it does build up a lot of bulk under here. What the 70 denier does is the big difference, of course. Very effective little fly.
Not that the fish would care, but you could dress that up with a little olive dubbing or something too, I suppose.
Yep, sure.
If you want,
Sure
if
you
you
could.
want to use that heavier thread. I like the cider. That's cool.
Yeah, the cider's cool.
Yeah, definitely. I usually, first few times I went trout fishing, I thought, oh my gosh, I was down in a real fast moving stream, and I'm like, which white spot is my fly? I can't find the darn thing. So that's when I started using this, and the next fly I'm going to use a little piece of foam to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah,
So,
I was
yeah,
up
we're
on
only at-
I was up on Spring Creek in Colorado a couple of years ago up by Taylor Reservoir, and I was fishing size 18 dries. And yeah, that's what happened to me too, you know. It's just okay. I think it's there. Let me see if anything takes it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'd much rather be able to follow the dry fly as opposed to waiting to see something splash and grab it. Okay, so I'll get this out. And anybody have any other questions or comments about the Charlie Boy Hopper?
I think that's going to be a great fly here in Nebraska. I use something called a gurgler in yellow.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you that I could put a gurgler on that thing and put a dropper off it, and it'd be very effective for some of what we fish for here.
Good. All right, this next fly, and the last one I have planned, is a bluegill fly. Tons of legs. I call it a spider. This is one that I came up with. And years ago, at beginning tying class, we were teaching beginners how to use these pre-cut foam bodies and binding it down up in the very front and throwing some rubber legs in, and we call it a spider. And talk about just spinning around the hook shank. This was notorious for it, even with super glue. Fish it a little bit, and super glue would break loose, and it was just terrible. So I thought to myself, okay, you know how to fix this. Just design a fly and do it. So I've got, I don't know how well you guys can see. I've got peacock herl under here. Rubber legs. These rubber legs are actually from a spinnerbait. Spinnerbait skirt. Like one of these. These make excellent legs. Really tremendous amount of action. This is actually a spinnerbait. Before I saw the light, so to speak, and became a fly fisherman exclusively, I used to make my own spinnerbaits. This is one of them. But I had some of those skirts left over, and I thought I'm going to try that on a fly. And sure enough, it works really well. Tons of action. And of course, some waters, that many legs, all that action going on might scare some fish away. Frankly, I think it calls up the bigger bluegill for me.
And the
Of course,
advantage of those spinner blade skirts, there's like a big variety of colors usually in there. Some of them are barred,
yes,
chartreuse black, there's all kinds of different colors.
yes, it's endless. The one that I'm getting this off of has parts there. Some of them are black, and some of them are that purplish, greenish, blue, whatever. Works really well, and it's a
I
lot
like
less
that
expensive.
purple.
Yeah. Okay, we'll drop that out. Didn't mean drop it that hard. As far as materials, all we need is a hook, a dry fly hook, what size I'm on? Probably size 12. Yeah, size 12. EMC 100, size 12. Blowing it out a little bit. There we go. Piece of foam for the body, some peacock herl, and rubber leg material like I just showed you. And some black thread. I'm going to use 70 denier black ultra thread. I like ultra thread a lot. I use it a great deal of the time because it flattens out really, really well for like splitting it. And it cords up really quick and it's really, really strong. Like I said, I can flare deer hair with 70 denier. Try that with some of the other brands and it's not going to happen. Okay, I'm going to do the same crisscross thread bags. Spin my thread clockwise, like I said before. Spin it clockwise because every time we take a turn with the thread, we put one clockwise twist in it. So if I spun it counterclockwise, I'd be undoing some of the twists that I just put in. I'm really binding a piece of foam down on here, so I want this to have some texture. Same story with the crisscross thread base. One layer binding down the other. All right. A piece of foam. I like to, it's not necessary, but I like to knock the corners off of this. Makes it a little easier to start. Really should have stopped and put my other jaw, my mid jaw in. Slide it down a bit. Okay. This bound down well. Tight wraps. Doing this to this foam, by the way, is destroying any floatability properties that may have been in it. So that's not going to help it float. Now, I'm going to tie in some peacock because, again, what did the fish see? It sees that. I don't know that that's going to look like a food source necessarily. So I'm going to use 2 peacock curl. I'll pull a couple fairly plump looking ones out. And line up. I'm going to tie it in by the butts. They're stronger, but not the very butt. Just want to make this simple. Tie it in like so, along the hook shank. Get a little bit long. Now I'm going to get my thread right back here against it. I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced wrapping stranded material like this, 2 or more peacock curl strips, for example. You start wrapping it and you get about halfway up the hook shank and they start spreading out. So you got some that are way back here, some that are back here. Well, you need to have exact same amount of tension on all of the fibers. And that's not easy to do. Of course, there's various ways you can handle this. Twist it up with the thread, make a rope out of it. But this simple little pattern, I like to do this. I'm actually pushing the thread. Pushing the thread forward with the peacock. As it goes, that keeps thread tension against it. And that way they don't splay out on me, they stay together. Up about right there. So that last turn I want in front of the thread. I'm looking at, I'll tie it off. Couple turns behind. Now, when I pull this over, which is the next step, I think that's going to look more like a dinner to the fish. that down well. And this body, by the way, is on good and tight because of that binder strip. I'm going to run the thread back to where it hits the hook eye and chop that off. And actually, some guys call this a beetle pattern as opposed to a spider. Legs help. Slide the legs in the same manner. And of course, if these legs are, I don't remember if I actually said this or not, if the legs seem like they're possibly spooking the fish, you can always cut them off on stream.
Gary, except for the peacock curl, that's exactly the same fly we call a gurgler up here in Nebraska.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to try that. I really like that gurgler, that peacock curl on there.
yeah. I really like peacock curl. And maybe it's because I like it so well, I have a lot of confidence in it as far as fishability. So maybe I came up with this fly, maybe not. You know, every time I think I've invented something, either a cast or a fly, a couple months later I see some knucklehead on Facebook doing the same thing, or on YouTube doing the same thing. Now,
Yeah, it's like we say, you know, there's nothing new in the world. We just keep reinventing the same old things over and over.
I believe so. I was, like you mentioned to begin with, I'm an FFI casting instructor, and I one day was putting together a class for the our casting instructors, and I wanted to get creative with a roll cast, so I figured out how to do a roll cast pickup with a haul. And I was just so proud of myself. About 2 months later, I saw a guy on YouTube doing the same exact thing.
I wish you lived a little closer. I could use an FFI instructor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been over 20 years ago that I certified. Be careful. My wood finishing.
And I'll say you're one of the few people I've seen that still uses the hand method for tying, for whip finishing flies.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, there's that little guy. Oh, I forgot to put the little piece of foam, but you guys know what's going on. I usually, before I cut the thread, I'll lay this little piece of foam, any piece, whatever color, lay that in, bind it down, and cut it off real short. Ended up with the fly finder, I call it, like so. And as I ran some thread back behind on this one. It makes the legs kind of hang forward. But yeah, as far as the tools, it's kind of been a progression. You learn to use the half-inch tool, and you learn to do whip finish with that. And it's you see somebody using a whip finish tool. Okay, great. I'll get the whip finish tool out. I can't tell you how long it took me to learn how to do this. I'd be ashamed to tell you how. And then I see a guy doing it by hand. So then I end up all these tools I learned how to use, and now they're all obsolete except for tip of my bodkin.
I learned how to tie flies almost 45 years ago now. And that's how we learned it, was with a non-hand whip finish. And then I spent 20 years trying to figure out how to use that stupid whip finish tool. And then when I finally figured it out, I said, oh, this is easy, but you know, it's no more easy than doing it my old way. So, hey, and your grip with the bodkin is just amazing. I love that.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm glad people like it. I've gotten a lot of comments about that.
Sometimes, if you have to, sometimes you're limited with a whip finish tool on how large of a whip finish tool it is, whether you can reach back like we were
Right.
doing a zonker the other night. A little difficult to try to work that around the length of the fly, depending on the size of it. With
Sure.
using your hands, a lot of
Right.
times you can put it where you want it to be, and
Yep.
like we said in the in Al's thing that you did for him, that trick with the bodkin is really that's a special trick. And I'm going to practice that and try to get the hang of it, because it's sure a lot of times the problem with doing it with your hands is it's kind of hard to have control of that last loop and where it lands. Sometimes you're
Exactly.
tying down legs and you're tying down hackles and but that's a good way to gain control of that last loop. I like that.
That's exactly why I started doing it. Actually, I first started. I would do it with get a good loop, and I have a real large loop, and I was binding, like you said, binding down to the materials that didn't want to. So I put my finger in there and bind it down, and then I got to thinking, oh, I could just slide the bodkin in and
Right.
go. Then I started thinking, well, why not put the bodkin in my darn hand to begin with, and
Right.
just keep it there.
And
The
then a lot
biggest
of
problem
times
I
I'll
had
use
doing
the,
it by hand was my hands would get so dry and rough that the thread
yeah.
would catch on my fingers,
yeah,
and
that
it
could
just
be a
made it
problem
terrible.
too.
Yep.
But the
I'll use
bodkin
the
solves that
half-hitch
problem
tool,
completely.
like on dry flies, especially smaller ones. I'll use the half hitch tool a lot of times to kind of force the hackles back, so I don't have to try to maneuver around them to get the head tied down. Using a half hitch tool, you're never going to trap down hackles, into the eye and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right.
So I mean, I use different methods for different things, but I do need to get back into practicing the hand technique, because that'd be good on zonkers and some of the other flies that you want to reach back toward the back of the hook.
Right. You can literally put a half hitch anywhere you want and fly.
Yeah, that's
Doing it the
why
way
I
I do.
liked it so much, because I can use it on the bend of the hook, which is where I finish off my Japanese flies.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
all finished at the end. So
And you never
Yeah.
have to look for it. Your fingers are always there.
that's right.
I'm right here.
I find it funny on Davey McPhail does it a lot. You can tell if he starts crowding the head a little bit, he'll put glue on his thread instead of gluing the head like he always does. You
Yeah.
can tell if he
Yeah, I've
starts
seen that.
to get too busy around the head, he'll put glue on the thread and then wrap it.
Yep.
Use that as part of his
Yep.
whip
Well,
finish.
that's a good trick.
It is. There's a way to get around everything.
Sure.
But I mean, sometimes he just does it because it's a busy front of the fly, and not necessarily because he did anything wrong.